Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. Thank you so much for joining me. The title of today's podcast, Another Impeachment and Debt Craziness. So I want to go over some market performance, a brief discussion on another impeachment that is underway and what's likely going to transpire from that, an in-depth look at the U.S. debt clock today, and we're going to time travel into the future as we have been doing little by little, going 4 years into the future just to see where things stand. It'll make your head turn, head spin, eyes roll in the back of your head, make you say some profanity, but that's par for the course. And then a conference that I was watching today, part of it anyway, because they're releasing it in piecemeal, from DoubleLine, which is the company that was founded by Jeffrey Gundlach. I have mentioned him a handful of times on this podcast, somebody I follow on Twitter, and anytime he has an interview, some know him as the Bond King. That's how the media portrays him, although he doesn't like that title. But he has an annual conference. This is, I believe, his second such conference with a handful of other people that I tend to follow on Twitter and listen to whenever they give interviews. So I want to discuss some of that. I have some disagreements with them with respect to inflation and some other socioeconomic things that they were seeing, but we'll have a discussion on that if we have time. But first, to market performance, just to get that out of the way, we have the dollar index trading at 89.94, so little changed from yesterday, but still flirting with that 90 handle, but down right now overnight, down about 0.2%. There was some big movement with some of those cross pairs, especially with the British pound flirting once again with a $1.37 against the U.S. dollar. So some more dollar weakness we'll continue to monitor, and Bitcoin is trading at $33,900 a coin. Overnight futures trading, we have the Dow Jones Industrial Average up about 0.5%. The S&P 500 is up 0.25%. And the NASDAQ 100 is in the green as well, up 0.4%. Japanese cash trade put on a gain of 1%, hitting another 30-year high. Still has a ways to go to hit its all-time high, but it is marching upward. A sea of red across the pond in Europe. Biggest loser was the UK markets, giving back 0.2%. Cash trade in Australia put on a slight gain, up 0.1%. On the share price front, Apple was flat. Tesla put on another 4.7%, up 8%, down 8%, up 4.7%. It's a penny stock, but of course it is one of the largest corporations on the planet with respect to market cap. Will be the poster child of the everything bubble, make no mistake about it. Microsoft lost 1.2%. Amazon a slight gain, up 0.2%. And Facebook continued its decline, losing 2.25%. But the financials continue to do well. JP Morgan Chase putting on an additional 1.6%, and Goldman Sachs 2.9%. This is on the back of oil continuing its ascent. So this is basically the military-industrial complex trade, oil moving higher, which we'll talk about in a minute. And, of course, the Federal Reserve giving the green light for these banks to once again engage in share buyback programs, which is what they're going to do. Why wouldn't they? They were rewarded for doing so in the past. It's financial engineering, but that is the world in which we live. Commodities, we have WTI trading at $53.57 a barrel, Brent at $56.97, call it $57 a barrel, marching ever closer to $60 a barrel once again. Natural gas, $2.75. Gold and silver, gold at $1,860 an ounce. Silver at $25.53 an ounce. So this is just fantastic with respect to these commodity prices again. These are input costs across the board and everything that is done across the global supply chain. It takes energy to do absolutely everything at one point or another. We have tens of millions structurally unemployed and underemployed, tens of millions waiting evictions, tens of millions of Americans in food bank lines. This is not what they need. We do not need higher energy costs, but that is what is going to occur. I really don't see this reversing anytime soon. This is money printing. This is what happens. Now, may it be short-lived? It might be. Maybe the dollar does a strong reversal and it has the effect of bringing these commodities down with them. But if we continue to print more money, which we are going to do, once the Biden administration is sworn in, they're very much likely going to pass another quote-unquote stimulus package, increasing those $600 checks to $2,000. And it's going to be an interesting story as to how they work that out. Are they just going to say, well, some people have already received $600. Are they going to cut them a check for $1,400? Or are they just going to say, screw it, just give everybody $2,000 on top of the $600 if they already got it? More power to them. How are they going to work that out? And then they'll work on something else after the fact there too. Remember, Nobody Cares Act 1.0, 2.0, which we just had with the $900 billion monstrosity. And don't forget the kicker with the $1.3 trillion spending bill just to keep the lights on in this country for a few months. Nobody Cares Act 3.0, I imagine once Joe Biden is sworn into office, we'll probably have those checks by Valentine's Day, if not sooner. And then they will work on at least another package. So call that the Nobody Cares Act 4.0, and God only knows what will happen from there. Money we don't have. We're going to beg, borrow, spend, print, do whatever we have to do. We are a first world banana republic. So we'll continue to monitor commodity prices, but they continue to trend higher. And as I've stated, I believe this is going to be the decade bull market for commodities and precious metals. So these are the early innings. And to round it out, Uncle Sam's 10-year junk note is yielding 1.12%. So slightly below where we were yesterday. So there you have it, some market performance. Now on to another impeachment. So, with only a week to go until Inauguration Day and the official end of the Trump administration, Congress is set to have another vote on impeachment. Now, this time it appears that there is going to be some Republican support. How much, of course, remains to be seen, but we know that Liz Cheney, a prominent, if you will, Republican, definitely within the leadership of the Republican Party, has stated publicly that she is going to be voting for impeachment. Recall, last year during the impeachment of Donald Trump, no Republican supported it. In the House, obviously you had a couple votes from, Mitt Romney in the Senate voted for it on one count. But in the House, no Republican support. This time, a little different. And we're already seeing a couple other Republicans coming out saying that they, too, are going to vote for impeachment. So Liz Cheney coming out, does that give some cover to some on-the-fence Republicans? It's okay, she's doing it, and a couple others are too. Join the club and impeach the guy this time. And, of course, there is some other news out there stating that Mitch McConnell thinks that what the president did was impeachable as well. The sources I got that from, New York Times and CNN, so you could take that as you will. But nonetheless, that's the statement that is out there, that Mitch McConnell is okay with this process moving forward. So Mitch McConnell, in conjunction with Liz Cheney, does that give some cover to House Republicans and Senate Republicans to go ahead, voice it, and not only impeach him in the House, but convict him in the Senate, which of course would be removal. So there is, of course, a lot of political calculus taking place. Democrats clearly don't like Donald Trump. They despise him. They've been after him since day one. So this is just a continuation of that to the very end, literally to the very end of his administration. It's also a little bit Machiavellian, if you will, because the Democrats want to put the Republicans on record. Do you support what took place at the Capitol? Because, of course, they're blaming Donald Trump for the entirety of it. I went through the hypocrisy thick enough to cut with a knife. But that's par for the course with these idiots. Again, hashtag fire Congress. Every one of them, I don't care what party. If you think it makes a difference if they're a Republican or a Democrat, that's your first problem, pal. And it's not a small one, it's a big one. You got to get rid of all of them. But that's what they do. That's what they're known for, the hypocrisy. So the Democrats, they want to go in for the kill, if you will, to the very end. They want to get the Republicans on record because a lot of people, and rightly so, are upset with what took place on the Capitol. So they want to say, you really support that by supporting the president? Because he was definitely part of it. There's no denying that. He was telling people months before the election, if he wins, it's okay, everything's fine, that's what's supposed to happen. If I lose, it's rigged. We got to take back our country. You got to fight. You can't back down to these people. Anything that could potentially incite or cause somebody to interpret it in a way that, yeah, we have to resort to violence or to force at some extent, to some degree. That's not a surprise. And that unfortunately happened. And now there are other threats, according to the FBI, across every single state in the union, that there are going to be protests and perhaps armed protests at all of the state capitals. I am all for peaceful protests. That's as American as apple pie. Let it be done peacefully. There's 1,000,001 reasons to put these people on notice at the federal and state level. Of course, I don't think that this is the justifiable reason with a lot of these conspiracy theories, with a lot of this dangerous rhetoric that we've been hearing over the past few months. There are enough legitimate reasons to do something like this, to get these people's attention, to say we're not going to take it anymore. But that's not where we are. So this is just going to continue to drive a bigger wedge in between the Democrats and the Republicans and just the country in general. Because this is 100% political as opposed to principle. And data-driven, by the way, because we talk about all of the data here all of the time. Those are legitimate reasons to put these people on notice. Those are legitimate reasons to protest peacefully. And then, of course, if Mitch McConnell, if that's true that he's upset, and I have no doubt that Mitch McConnell is upset, because you have to understand something, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what they say about another politician, these politicians, to them, they're all numero uno. They are all number one. Yes, they might like riding the coattails of somebody else, but they come first. Yes, Mitch McConnell might like that he was able to get some things done because Donald Trump was president, but guess what? If Mitch McConnell had to choose between Donald Trump remaining president or him remaining the leader of the Senate, see ya, Trump. Mitch McConnell wants to remain the leader of the Senate. Well, that's gone. And I'm sure to some degree he holds Donald Trump accountable for what took place in the Senate runoff election in Georgia. All they had to do, the Republicans, all they had to do was win one of those two seats, and they'd still be okay. But they didn't. They lost both of them, and it gives Vice President-elect, once she's in, Kamala Harris, she will serve as the president of the Senate, so she will be the tie-breaking vote. So that gives the Democrats control. And now we're going to have Chuck Schumer once again as the leader of the Senate. God help us. Doesn't make any difference. Him, McConnell, don't matter. But that is what we're going to have to deal with. So McConnell, not happy. How will he vote? Are they attempting, they being the Republicans, are they attempting to say, well, this is how we're going to regain the Republican Party? By casting Donald Trump out. We supported him. We tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. He wasn't your typical politician. He was an outsider. He doesn't fully understand all of the parliamentarian moves, doesn't fully understand the way the government functions, this, that, the other. There was a big learning curve, but we still stood by him because he was right in the general direction. He struck a chord, whatever they want to make their argument. So please forgive us. We tried our best to work with him. We couldn't control him, and this is just what we dealt with. We tried to get as many wins as we could. We tried to put the judges on the benches, the justices on the Supreme Court. We tried to get tax cuts here and regulation cuts there. We tried to do all of these little things in piecemeal, the best we could. But we couldn't control the man. Don't hold that against us. We're now kicking him out. If that's what happens, we're now kicking him out. Please forgive us and come back home and vote for us. Will people buy it? I hope not. I hope this is the end of the Republican Party. I hope this is the end of the GOP, because then we just got one more party to get rid of. And believe me, those idiots will hang themselves over the next couple of years as they maintain power over the government. So that'll be it. And then, of course, there are others within the Republican Party who say, no, just be done with this. Not another impeachment. Don't vote for it. Just be done with it. He's gone in a week. See you later, sayonara. Buy him some new golf clubs. Send him to Florida, Bedminster, New Jersey, Scotland, wherever the hell he wants to go. See you later, pal. Don't make him a martyr. To me, there's logic on both sides of these arguments. But net, the Republican Party is going to remain deeply divided, and a house divided cannot stand. It will crumble, which again is perfectly fine by me. The question, of course, if the president is impeached and removed, will that inflame his supporters, especially the most loyal among them? And I think that is 100% yes. 100% yes. Because the relationship, this is my observation, the relationship that most of these people have, especially his most loyal supporters, it's not a logical relationship with Donald Trump. It is an emotional relationship with Donald Trump, and an extreme emotional relationship with the president. Because I can talk till I'm blue in the face about all of the things that I talk about. He didn't do X, Y, Z, and these are huge issues. These are big problems that we're going to have to continue to pay for. Future generations that have nothing to do with this are going to have to continue to pay for this. Draining the swamp? Not even close. But try telling that to these people, and they're not going to believe it for a second. And that's because Donald Trump represents something to them. He is a man that they believe finally listened to them. Finally heard their cries of pain and frustration and depression and despair and being looked down upon. This guy finally listened to me. And so he can do anything. He can say anything. It doesn't matter. That's how strong that emotional connection is to his most loyal of supporters. Now, of course, there are a lot of people who simply voted for him because he's the Republican, and there was no way people were going to vote for Joe Biden. I understand that. This two-party system, Coke or Pepsi, that's all you get. This is supposed to be a country of choices, and the demented jokers, that's the best we could do. So it's going to be hard for those people, his most loyal supporters, to just step back, step away, to ever come to an understanding that what he has done was wrong, that he didn't drain the swamp, that he lied and misrepresented, gave falsehoods and a lot of exaggeration. Some of them, of course, are harmless, but a lot of them were not. A lot of them were extremely dangerous. He is the TV president. Stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned. You thought this week's episode was great? Just wait till next week's. And he gets people and he hooks them all the time. He is the little boy that cries wolf. How many times are you going to believe him? I've been done with him a long time, but a lot of people aren't. They just keep believing that something's coming. And it doesn't happen. And now he's gone. Well, at least not yet. We got another week. But this is how 2020 came in. This is how 2021 is coming in. Another impeachment. So, at the end of the day, your guess is as good as mine as to whether or not he will be impeached and removed. Very likely impeached. Whether removed is another question. And if he is removed, of course, he will not be able to hold federal office again. And if he's impeached, he will become the first president to be twice impeached, which is a record. He likes holding records. I don't know if he'll like that one, but that's what it would be. So that's that with another impeachment. Now, with respect to the U.S. debt clock, I don't want to go over everything, but there are a few things that I want to talk about. And again, we are looking at the debt clock today, right now, as it is, and where it's likely going to be if current rates hold, where we will be on January 13th, 2025. All right, just current rates. And it's very likely that the current rates of these growth rates are going to increase, at least in the short term, as the Democrats attempt to push more and more, quote-unquote, stimulus and spending into the economy. And as we stated yesterday, spending is not growth. Production, investment is growth. So we're building this economy ass backwards, and it's completely unsustainable. So as it stands right now, do your best to remember these numbers. I will round to make it easy. And, of course, you can check this out for yourself, and I always encourage that you do. usdebtclock.org, usdebtclock.org. You'll, of course, on that homepage get how it looks today. And then there is a button on the upper right-hand of the screen that says Debt Clock Time Machine. Just click over on that and then click on 2025, and you'll see where it stands. So right now, U.S. national debt is at $27.8 trillion. We talk about that all the time, so you're very familiar with that number. Debt per citizen is at $84,000. Debt per citizen, $84,000. Debt per taxpayer, $222,000. All right, that's where we stand today. 4 years from now, U.S. national debt is at $49.1 trillion. So call it an increase of about 75%. And as we talked about this last month, an additional $22 trillion over the course of 4 years. That's going to be the Biden-Harris administration. That's all it is. Before you know it, there's going to be 100 idiots on stage attempting to run for president. Before you know it, you blink, boom, presto, 100 idiots up there having no clue what's going on are going to say they're qualified to be the president of the United States. All right, so this is not that far away at all. So that will basically be from George Washington to Donald Trump, adding that, because that I think $22 trillion was about where we were in 2019. Okay? So everything that it took from the start of our republic, George Washington, to Donald Trump in 2019, all of that debt is now just simply going to be here in another 4 years. Debt per citizen, $142,000. Huge increase. And debt per taxpayer is now at $362,000 in 2025, again, at current rates. So huge increases there. A couple other things I want to talk about, obviously, is the U.S. Tax revenue that comes in. Federal tax revenue right now is about $3.5 trillion. Where are we 4 years from now? $3.9 trillion. That's nothing compared to the amount of spending that is going out there, out the door. Currently, the actual, not the official, the official is the BS number. Again, always look at the actual federal spending as it stands today, about $7.9 trillion. That gives us an actual federal budget deficit of $4.4 trillion. All right, where are we 4 years from now? U.S. federal spending will be at $8.9 trillion. And our actual federal budget deficit will be at $6.4 trillion. So we're tacking on an additional $2 trillion. Meanwhile, all we're bringing in is an additional $400 billion. You understand how out of control this is? Now, you talk about these numbers, extremely difficult to fathom. $49 trillion. What does that even mean? Does it even matter at that point? Are we just going to just continue to print money, give people a universal basic income, what have you, and call it a day? And these numbers are all just make-believe. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. It does matter, and that's why we have people frustrated, depressed, angry, etc., etc., and in a lot of it justifiably so. I understand the Trump loyalists. I understand them 100%. That's why I was able to predict that Donald Trump was going to win in 2016. I knew he was tapping into something. If the economy was fantastic, Hillary Clinton would have won. But it wasn't, and it isn't. It's just a shame, and that's why so many people are still suffering, and these issues are structural. And COVID-19 just simply made things worse. That's all it did. Some things, yes, it changed in and of itself, but we know throughout the entirety of our podcast through 2019, we knew that the economy was rolling over. COVID-19 just sped up the process. And then I'll leave you with this, and we'll have to have that conversation on the Double Line Conference tomorrow or later in the week, depending on tomorrow's events. But one of the heartbreaking things here, and this will tie in nicely with our conversation once we get to that Double Line Conference as well, because this is about the story of inflation and how that eats into savings. So right now, savings per family comes in at $28,500. Savings per family, $28,500. Fast forward to today, but in 2025, savings per family is at $1,500. $1,500. That's a decline of like 95%. That is what inflation does. That is what government does. It steals your wealth. It steals your savings. It steals your purchasing power. And some people have the nerve to go out on the media, I don't care where, and say that there's no inflation. It's ridiculous. That doesn't happen overnight. 28,000 to 1,500. This is a process. And it's unfolding right before us. And yeah, inflation might not be as bad here as it is in other countries. That's because inflation doesn't carry a passport. You understand? It can go wherever it wants. It jumps borders. It doesn't understand borders. It goes wherever it goes. But it's here as well. People are not protesting and rioting and attempting to overthrow their governments and having success in overthrowing their governments, depending on what country you're in. They're not doing it because they're frustrated that the cost of living is so damn affordable. That's not how it works. They are frustrated and angry, and rightly so, because the cost of living is so unaffordable. That's how all of this is connected. Revolutions are fought on empty stomachs. They're fought on empty wallets. And this is from a tax that nobody votes for. The people don't want this. But this is what politicians do. They pass the buck. They can go home and they can look you in the eye and they can say, well, we're going to have to raise taxes. That's not politically convenient for them. They don't want to do that. They can come home and they can look you in the eye and say, well, we're going to have to cut costs. We're going to have to cut benefits. Well, that's not politically convenient for them either. But what they can do is they can continue to promise things, get your vote, and then borrow money and have the central bank bail them out with printing the money. To have future generations pay the costs. Higher inflation, higher costs of living, lower living standards, fewer opportunities, etc., etc. This is what happens. This is highly predictable, highly foreseeable. We sacrifice the long term for the short term. It's the exact opposite of how we should be functioning as a society. Because in doing so, we create and prop up zombie corporations, which in and of themselves are a drag to economic growth and prosperity. There is no free lunch. There is no easy solution to all of this. Garbage in, garbage out. Shouldn't surprise or shock anybody. And we're going to be throwing in another $22 trillion of junk and garbage over the next 4 years. So what do you think is going to be the outcome? I don't know what this great reset's going to be, but I'm not going to like it. And I don't think you are either if you're a true American and understand what that means. Because I don't think this is going to be a restoration of the U.S. Constitution. I don't think this is going to be a restoration of our justice system and the rule of law. I don't think this is going to be a return to free market capitalism. Do you? The Great Reset? I don't trust these people. They put us into this place, into this predicament, into this environment, and now I'm supposed to believe that, well, we're going to have some sort of great reset. They finally solve the Sphinx, the riddle of the Sphinx. I don't think so. Fire them all. But there you have it. Another impeachment, debt craziness. Of course, we'll continue our discussion and analysis on both of those topics. I will bring into the discussion either tomorrow or later in this week, hopefully, that double line conference, what some of these people are mentioning, some of the things I agree with, why I agree with them, some of the things I disagree with, why I disagree with them, and where we're likely headed. So there you have it. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.